Hello, listeners. This is David here, editing in this brief message before our interview, announcing our first merch item on consensus unreality.bandcamp.com. You can find a beautiful new tote bag bearing our logo and some other stuff you can read about on there. If you are a Patreon member, check out our latest post and you'll get a promo code there. If you're not, you better check it out because we have bonus episodes, written content, and much more over there at patreon.com/consensusunreality. Okay, enjoy the interview. Welcome to episode 20 of Consensus Unreality, which is a podcast. I'm here with... It's so much more than a podcast. I'm so sorry.
Just a podcast?
Yeah, it's a information portal. I'm here with my co-host Ben, and we're back with an interview, which we haven't done in a while. We are joined today by Evana Roman, coming to us from Richmond, Virginia. Evana is a poet, a musician, a teacher, and for now, I guess we'll say an experiencer. Clairvoyant. Is clairvoyant too heavy?
No, that's pretty accurate, yeah.
Okay. So how are you doing? I mean, to peel back the curtain, we just talked for like a half an hour before turning the mic on, but we'll pretend to do it again.
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm ready to show some experiences to the world.
Yep, they need to hear it. So I was thinking we could start from the very beginning. How would you say you first kind of knew that you were interested in strange subjects or the paranormal, or maybe, had initial inklings that you might have some sort of second sight?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. I would say I realized something about that in the second grade, because in school, you kind of are in this really relaxed state, especially like after lunch in the afternoon. And I'd kind of get in these like daydreaming states, and I'd be staring at my teacher against the blackboard. And I started to see this light, just huge light around them. And I'd just kind of look at that and just see like, what is that? And I think that was the first indication of what I now understand to be clairvoyance, and that's an aura. So, but I didn't kind of get to understand fully that until years and years later. I just kind of recognized that I saw lights around people and objects and everything from that earliest memory. And yeah, so that would be the first experience. And then funnily enough, I kind of started to understand that I could interpret colors around people after seeing a lecture by Werner Herzog in Charlottesville. And he had like he was on stage and he had this like incredible violet aura, and it was just like unmistakable. And then that was like, after that point, I started to focus in on it and then try to interpret colors around people and reading them.
Wow.
So is that, do you think that accompanies like certain situations, or is it really more common to see that?
No, yeah, I mean, everyone has one. Both of you,
Can you see it right now?
Yeah. So
What? That's crazy.
yeah, it's really, it's like a lot more simple than I think people try to mystify it into being. It's just energy, seeing energy around all things, and essentially, like, I think what I've determined is, it's just like a part of the energetic body, and it does change based on different people's emotional experiences or physical health.
Yeah. So when did you start to understand that you could extract information from that, or how did you like begin to contextualize that? Did you start like reading about auras and stuff, or?
I think that it actually didn't come until after I had been reading the tarot for years. So I kind of got more comfortable doing that. So I've been reading cards for like 13 years. And through that, I kind of understood that these are archetypes, symbols that can be broken down. Like colors are archetypes and symbols and experiences that can be broken down. And are just kind of reflections of experience or kind of memories that I can tap into from my own frame of reference and then interpret. So that's kind of, I've only recently actually really become comfortable with interpreting auras just after doing that work for so long, just kind of understanding the tools, or like I kind of call them jumping off points that clue me into something about the person.
What drew you to the tarot as opposed to anything else? Is that, I mean, for me, it was just what was there. Was that your experience as well?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think I had just always been trying to make sense of my experiences from childhood, and I was given them as a gift. Actually, my husband gave them the first tarot cards that I still use today, and then I just started working with them, and it took a while to really understand what was happening. I think that initially I was coming from this kind of psychotherapeutic standpoint where I was just kind of like using those archetypes and delivering information that way. And then it just naturally evolved into psychic messages instead. So it was just kind of like a imperceptible shift between the two. And then the cards just representing certain psychic experiences or certain experiences in human life that I would know each one corresponded to.
Yeah, cool. That makes sense to me. So then your sort of practice with the tarot kind of converged with your aura practice, and that sort of, they became like a sort of a new thing, or what happened with that?
Yeah, I think that honestly, my practice, I feel like, has changed a lot within the last year, because people would come for tarot readings and I'd give them that. But recently, I kind of started to try other things that felt quicker. So I kind of started sitting in meditation before giving readings. And when I did that, I realized that I was kind of getting more specific or accurate information from doing that than attempting to discern it from the cards. And the same way is kind of like reading an aura. So I just kind of could tune in with more specifics by doing that. So I kind of, and I can go into explanation with that. So essentially, before someone would get a tarot reading from me, I would sit in meditation and then I started kind of getting symbols or colors or feelings or sensations. And that is something that I learned to interpret. So it's kind of like, if you can imagine, just clearing your mind completely and stepping aside. That's pretty much the key, is just completely stepping aside. And then it's like if your mind is a glass of water and then someone is dropping just information into the glass, and it's kind of disseminating into there, and it's up for me to kind of interpret. And sometimes it's much more subtle, and sometimes it's really intense. Like usually it'll be symbols from my frame of reference that I have to interpret. Like if I'll see, sometimes I'll see like a house and keys, and that will indicate that someone has moved or is moving into a new house. Sometimes, and then I'll feel whatever they feel about that situation. So if it's anxious or happy or sad, anything like that. Or, earlier today, I kind of, you kind of have to feel through it. So earlier today, my reading was about someone who was unhappy with doing so much work and not being recognized for it at their job. And so the symbol that I got for that was like a bell being rung, like frantically, like almost like for someone to keep attending to their needs. So it works like that. It's very interpretive, and hopefully it kind of starts to get a little bit more refined, but
interesting.
It'll be in addition to a feeling. So like a frustrated feeling or an angry feeling or something like that. And then that's what I deliver to the person getting the reading.
Huh. Do you ever get like, like stuff that you don't want coming in without trying to? Is there like a sense of being more open to, like, I guess you'd call it like negative psychic energy or like psychic attacks or stuff like that? I feel like that's like a perennial issue for that. Yeah.
I'm still working through my ideas of that. I think that's like a very emotion-based thing. So it's like a very human, like when we talk about like psychic, I'm just talking about human level, emotional level stuff. And I think that I'm definitely still parsing through how to interpret those things, especially in tandem with some of the mediumship stuff that I've been working through. So I think that what people talk about with that is just unrefined psychic ability. So at least like in my experience, it's like, yeah, like you might be walking with someone and feeling their emotion, but ultimately I believe that kind of you're responsible for your own body and your own energetic body, and it's up to you to tune into that and figure out what you yourself need. So I try not to worry too much about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fascinating. How long have you been working with other people? Like, when did you decide to put it to practice and engage others?
I've been doing it, like, at least I'd been doing tarot readings for like 13 years, just for anyone and everyone. But then I think I started taking it pretty seriously within the last 3 years. And it kind of has just evolved from there. As the more that I do it, the more that I can understand what my strengths are with doing this work. But it's been interesting, and I'm really grateful for everybody that has come into face with me and friends that have kind of allowed me to bounce things off of. I think that's been really helpful.
Yeah. I mean, that's really interesting because I feel like the story of how a psychic becomes like a practicing psychic is, I've never really like heard that anybody like parse that out, you know, like it's, there's got to be such a pathway to get there where you feel like confident enough to put that sort of skill to practice. It's really interesting, you know. I guess you just kind of assume that like a psychic is a psychic and you just decide to like open up a shop and put a sign outside. But yeah, it's interesting how that process accelerates or whatever.
Well, it's actually really scary, and it's risky, especially. But I think that if you are called to do something, then you have to give it a shot. So, but I did take a couple steps in making sure that I was validated in what I was doing. For instance, like even when I was just doing tarot readings, I contacted a lot of shop owners and asked if I could just come in and give the owners readings. And that was one way that was validating. You know, you have to have evidence to support it. So, you know, I wouldn't do this if I did not receive that evidence or validation from the sitter, because you know, it's really not, it's about them being validated. And if you as a psychic can't offer that, then there's not much.
Yeah. Were you nervous like your first couple of times, like with a stranger especially?
Yeah, but actually it's much easier to do strangers because it's like, you just kind of fall into it. I much prefer reading people that I don't know anything about, because it's easier to just step aside and just trust everything that's the biggest thing is to just trust everything that you're getting. And it's a hard lesson to learn. And I think that's probably where people get tripped up initially, because the goal is to remove your thinking mind completely. Which honestly, I mean, I guess I can just do that because I feel a lot. But yeah, I for sure giving readings. I get nervous before giving readings, but I just try to use that energy to be genuine and hope for helpfulness with the person that's receiving it.
Yeah. I'm always fascinated by like, I feel like there's this distinction between like what's an occult practice or like a magical practice, and then what is like psychic, which feels more like it's sort of pushed into like the paranormal. Like there's these kind of weird distinctions in this sort of universe where maybe the distinctions aren't as clear. Like, how do you think of yourself? Do you have like a magical or ritual practice, or is it like an ability? How do you think of it?
Yeah, I think I think that I kind of try to approach it without any kind of religious connotation, because that's the thing that feels hardest for me to resonate with. But when I just approach it just pure energy or pure spirituality, it's easiest to attach myself to it. And I mean, I think that many people can come at this regardless of magical affiliation. I myself do have certain rituals and practices, but none based in a specific religion.
Yeah.
Have you like
whatever?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. I mean, that's like kind of chaos magic adjacent, just like doing what works.
Yeah. Have you like contextualized it at all in terms of any sort of spirituality? I guess it's a similar question, but I'm just wondering if you like lean in any sort of direction, like if any of those like systems or maybe religious archetypes like resonate more with you.
No.
No. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. No, I just think of myself as God
Yeah.
and everyone else is also God.
Yeah. Right. Otherwise, you'd have a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
I guess following that, like, do you find yourself conversing with, let's say, non-human intelligences? Is that like a good term? Like, do you, because I feel like under, obviously under certain umbrellas like the Goetia or something, you're conjuring like a specific daemon that you are calling by name, etc. But I'm wondering if you sort of have like these conversations with things that aren't really coming from other people per se, getting foggy there, but
in my experience, no.
Mm-hmm.
I can only understand it as reading energy.
Yeah.
And what appears to me in my experiences have only been human, or what understands itself through that lens. So
yeah, the collective unconscious, like, does that term resonate, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, maybe if you clarified that a little bit more.
Well, it's easy to just like put that out there, Yeah. It's a great blanket for like all the whole spectrum of phenomena.
Yeah. As far as that which is not of or aware of this world, no. Mm-hmm. At least I don't set the intention to do that.
Yeah, it's really, it's interesting.
If you tried to, do you think you could, like if you sort of with all your might tried to contact some sort of angel or demon or being, do you think that you would get anywhere? Or is it sort of, is it your like belief that you'd sort of end up failing at that? Like, what do you think would happen if that was the intention?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe something scary, or I don't know.
Do you think
the reason I don't have much interest in that is because I think that my goal is to ultimately provide evidence and validation.
Right.
So unless that could offer that wouldn't be my intention.
Right. So like in like a healing sort of way for other people.
Yeah. Or just a reason to be tuning in to that to begin with,
So like a goal, like, and just, or something to be able to prove it when you sort of come back.
Yeah. So like, it's like people come to get readings to be witnessed, to be seen, especially by someone or something that has no reason to know certain things or be able to see certain things. And I feel like ultimately that probably makes you feel not alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That makes sense to me. Yeah.
You're probably the first guest we've had where I think it's like a completely people-centric lens of like the paranormal, which is really interesting. And I think we can get into the nature of psychism. And I like to think about like panpsychism a lot, like thought shapes everything, but then it gets kind of weird to parse out like what is human and what's not if everything is made by thought, because we're always interested in these non-human intelligences as being a point, like a talking point, right? So it's like a kind of a funny thing to think about. What do you see as like the nature of psychism for you being? Kind of like yeah. It's like a big question. Or like, well, let's say, yeah, for our purposes, let's say the mechanics of it or kind of the makeup for you personally.
From what all I can understand, at least the psychic work to be is like, you know, if everything and everyone has an aura, then I'm just extending mine to touch theirs or to experience theirs or be wrapped in theirs in some way. And in that I can kind of reach around and feel for their experience. But I also like have recently come to understand it as like being psychic is just answering a question that hasn't been asked yet. Or like a way for the universe to remember itself.
Mm. I love that.
So close to eternity. I take it on and on. Uniform. And then one another.
Quarter classic. And like, how does this end up like informing your artistic practices? I mean, is it like a fluid relationship, you think?
Yeah, I think I'm just like always trying to point to something and pointing to something to answer my own questions or like my own experiences, but like also minimizing it. And like, that's why all my poetry and like songs are just like really simple statements and like totally honest. Cause I mean, I think that's how I experience things. They're kind of funny, but like simple and they're dark in that way too. It's just like, I feel good when I know I'm God, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I feel good when I know that. Or, the horror in paradise of choosing to be on the planet. It's just like really simple things, and just in the same way, everything is kind of dropped into my mind in a simple way where it's just like a movie or like a symbol or a feeling.
Have you ever done any like group work in terms of like ESP and stuff?
No.
I guess maybe like I mean like interfacing with somebody else who also has abilities.
Well, I am like developing in a mediumship circle, so I'm like learning from other mediums, and kind of working through that process just because I've had experiences with that I'm, you know, inevitably led to try to figure out, and understanding that it doesn't just end with like psychism. But it's definitely been it's been like a really like roller coaster ride, just reckoning with my own beliefs.
Yeah.
In regards to that.
What do you think in terms of mediumship? How is that distinct from your other sort of experiences?
Well, it definitely feels different. You know, all I can say is the feeling, the energy of the room, I guess it vibrates in a stronger density. So that's one aspect of it that I can isolate. It's a lot more intense when I'm like, it's not as interpretive. It's much more literal. So in like aspects of mediumship, I find it to just be totally literal, like being shown things that are exacting and undeniable, and feel very intense. Like my face usually gets really hot and my heart beats a lot faster. And I also feel that it's imperative that it's released in some way. Otherwise, like it just feels explosive. So it's different than like the psychic stuff.
I mean, people I think will think of like stuff like channelers and like sort of where these people from like the 90s are overtaken by these like astral beings and like something is speaking through them, giving messages. Are you ever communicating messages from somewhere else or something else, or is it a different experience for you?
No, I would say that the only thing that I've ever communicated is isolating a loved one that's passed, and then anything that could validate and that is proof that that's them for that person. So, you know, I don't really understand in full capacity that work. Right. And it's probably why I don't do it.
Yeah.
But for me, it's really important that anything that's given to another person is validated through evidence.
Yeah. Have you ever been like really surprised at the results of like work done with the medium group? Like, has anything ever just been like, whoa, what was that?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I've had moments. It's really intimate, and you have to be responsible and gentle, I think, with these things, because these people are grieving. And it's usually you're being partnered with somebody and you don't know anything about them. Just someone in the universe is sitting in front of you. Recently, I had an experience with a woman, and I kind of, the way that the information comes for me is usually I'll just immediately know what person is there with them. So for this, I knew that she had lost a husband, because it's kind of it's called claircognizance. It's just like an instant knowing. And so it's just like, okay, that I have this husband here, and then I'll see him. So clairvoyance is like a huge aspect of that. And so I'll describe what he looks like. And this man was a big, tall man and had like a smoke and a drink in his hand. And it kind of plays like a movie. And I saw him with a lot of friends and laughing. And I relayed that information. But then I also felt, you know, this tremendous, like, soul crushing love. And I did have an experience where I kind of just burst into tears, which is not usual, especially when giving a reading. It caught me off guard, and it didn't feel, it was almost shocking because it didn't feel quite like my tears, but it was just such an overwhelming bond that they had. And then he kind of brought through information that she knew, you know, she could validate, and we were both just kind of crying in this Zoom call, and it was really intense. I've had other ones where I brought through partners of people. One woman had a code with her husband, and the code was tulips, and that was supposed to be their symbol. You know how like Houdini and his mother had this like symbol, like, and that is how they knew it would be one of them, is if they came through with this symbol. So that is what this husband and wife did. And he came through with the symbol of tulips, and that was their chosen symbol for recognizing each other, I guess, after death. And so that was pretty cool.
Wow.
But,
yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. It kind of, like the way that you're describing it, it's like people have this information embedded in them. It's like scanning like a CD-ROM or something, you know, and then like the projection of information is just coming out. It's very, visual. It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the thing that is most notable is the feeling, or like the actual shift of energy in the room is how I know that it's different than like the psychic stuff, and like it is much more specific. And I guess like, okay, so this would never happen. Like, I had an experience a few years ago. I went with a couple friends like on a day trip, and we went into this little town, and there we walked into a shop, and then I walked into the shop and immediately could kind of like sense a presence, and it was like that heavy vibrating feeling of the room. It's like really overwhelming, and I was still like coming to terms with all of this and like trying to figure it out, sort it out, and make sure I'm not crazy. And I just remember kind of walking around the shop and trying to like release myself from the feeling, but ultimately this man that kind of identified himself as the shopkeeper's like past lover and coming through with information was just kind of barging through and overwhelming me. And I was like, in my head, I was like, I'm not doing this. We are not doing this right now. Like, I just don't want to deal with this. Like, I'm with my friends trying to have a fun time. But then the feeling just wouldn't go away that I had to kind of deliver this to this woman. And so in my head, I was like, all right, if I am really supposed to give her this information, just make her say the word rose. And that was like the only way I was going to give her this. And so I was just like sweating, like really just like so anxious, like feeling like my chest was going to explode, like in this shop, trying to like pretend like I was shopping and like looking at stuff. And I grabbed this soap off of the shelf. It was like sandalwood soap. And I went to the cash register and I was just like, okay, yeah, I'll take this. Like, I'm just trying to get the hell out of here. And the shopkeeper is like slow motion. She just looks at me and she like had this like slow look and just like looked at me in my eyes and was like, oh, sandalwood soap. I like this. But you know what I really love the smell of? And I was like, what? And she said, rose. And then I just like, my jaw was like dropped in front of this woman, and I was like, she had no idea what was going on. And I just looked at her and I was like, oh my God, my heart dropped it. But then I actually checked out and I left the shop and I was like, what the hell was that? I can't believe that just happened. And ultimately I like went back into the store and I was like, okay, I don't know, like, please, you know, if this doesn't resonate, don't worry about it. But I kind of, you know, told her like, I think I have this person for you. And, you know, like he's telling me about these things and about his life and how he died and heart issues and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, she kind of just like looked at me and was like tearing up and just said, thank you, and walked back over to the cash register. And I felt a lot better after that and left the store.
Wow. That's great. That's a crazy story. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But yeah, it can be kind of intense.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's much more subtle.
Do you ever start to impose any framework of like meaning onto it? Like, do you have any personal opinion of where this information is coming from? If it is like the actual soul of the person, or, you know, did you ever start to interrogate that, or do you just understand it for what it is and how you're receiving it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know. And I think that like a lot of that's my biggest struggle is like, I don't think it matters what I think. You know, I think that what it doesn't, yeah, I don't think it matters. I think, but I do think a lot of people put language and words to this and try to describe it like really cut and dry and plain terms. And that doesn't really work for me. But I do believe that we are more than a physical body, and I do think that consciousness survives death. To what degree that takes information, I don't know. But it's there.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, it's interesting to think about because that situation is so idiosyncratic. Where like I can think of one example where people have proposed like the stone tape theory, you know, of like people or events being watermarked onto places, and it's almost like this this 3D catalog of history can be tapped into. You know, this is just like a theory. This is like some theoretical shit. But then something like what you're explaining is just so it's so unique and situational, right? Like it's like this person is actually coming through and like, I need you to get this message through, which is kind of makes it more confusing, I think, than
it's definitely confusing. But for me, whatever this energy is very physically present because I can feel the difference. So I will say that. And I have had situations where, you know, information is brought through that even the sitter could not know until they went and asked someone about it. And that makes me feel that, you know, obvious intelligence of the consciousness there that's presenting.
Yeah. Do you think that this sort of stuff is just sort of always ambiently around and that it's sort of always like broadcasting, for lack of like a better word, and you happen to catch it? Or do you think they kind of consciously seek you out as sort of a messenger for whatever purpose?
Maybe, I don't know, maybe it could be, it seems to be that, like just like looking for a radio that's turned on to the right station.
Right. I'm thinking of it like just sort of like a constant presence that you might walk into, or is it like...
It doesn't feel that way to me.
Yeah, more like something that you enter, like, or like that sort of comes down to you from a different place. If you had to sort of conceptualize it, I mean.
I think it's like, you know how lightning strikes, but it's like looking for that point of attraction on the earth.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of like that.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense.
Do you ever think that there are thought forms that are independent of people that exist in the world, like almost like spiritual currents of thought? I just got reminded. Have you ever heard of the Philip experiment?
I don't think so.
This is something that I think Visa brought it up, Recluse, on our episode with him, or was it Jason Horsley? I can't remember.
It wasn't. I think it was either Joshua Cutchin or Recluse.
Yeah,
I think, but we might both. What if we're just wrong and it's just completely? Whatever.
It's one of those three. And I've heard of this story and then forgot it and then heard it again. But it's this experiment that was done in 1972 in Toronto, in which they created like a fictional ghost with a fictional backstory, like dating back to like the 1600s in England, and gave him the name Philip, like with a last name, and created this whole backstory. And then there was a seance. I guess the control group was probably mediums. I'm just like reading this on Wikipedia now because it just came to my mind. But and they actually did, like, there was an experience where people who weren't privy of the story being manufactured actually became conscious of this entity, and like received this information through like a seance. But this was like a totally made up like thought form, or like almost like a tulpa, right? Like this entity was like created, manufactured through this story. I mean, this is just like putting you on the spot, but I'm just curious.
Oh no, I mean, it just sounds like they were just being psychic.
Yeah.
But for what I can recognize, like, it's much more interpretive. You know, I kind of have to figure it out like a puzzle sometimes. Like, I have to feel it out. And I mean, I would be interested to see what their kind of messages or evidence for that was, because maybe it was a little bit more on the psychic side, which would make sense because you can kind of pull that out of anywhere.
Right.
Yeah. And it's more of just like a blueprint for all things in all directions. So that's kind of how I would, because that's how I would probably explain that. But
yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't think it has any sort of leanings on, you know, the existence of psychism or not. I think it, like, if anything, it affirms that idea. But it's an interesting conversation as to the idea of like thought forms and egregores and stuff, and where the line is, I think, between like a intelligence, you know, in the world and something more residual of humanity. Yeah, I don't know. It's curious. I mean, obviously, like, an example is like the Slender Man story, right? Where this thing was created as like an internet game, but then made manifest into the world, you know, like a tulpa, as mentioned before.
yeah, you know, well, I just like, I don't spend a whole lot of time. I think that's like fun. It's like fun to think about, but I don't spend a lot of time like and effort or like serious meditation on those things, just because I feel that what I have to offer is evidentiary support of the, you know, of the things that we're talking about. Whereas those things are kind of like, yeah, they're kind of fun.
Yeah. That's like me and Ben are just like cinder blocks, like closed off to the psychic realm, just talking about.
Speak for yourself. I've had
no.
my share.
Yeah,
we're just like recklessly speculating on everything.
No, I think I'm sure both of you are very intuitive. You just don't have the frame of reference to view it.
No, it totally. I totally understand what you're saying, though. It makes sense. Like, I think if, like, having the experiences, the very personal experiences that you're having, it seems like you'd want to just devote energy to understanding that better. And
yeah, I mean, at least for me, I mean, I really have like beat myself up over doing this, like, really, and be doing this in public or doing this intimately. But I think that I can continue to do it as long as it's validated, as long as there's evidence for whoever's receiving the reading. That's really the most important thing. but yeah, it definitely is. It's a leap of faith to trust in that or put yourself into that position in the first place. So you definitely have to have experiences that encourage you to do so.
Have you ever experimented with any sort of like technologies that you think may have increased psychic experiences, like flotation or anything like that?
Oh, well, my husband used to work at a center that had like the sensory deprivation tanks, but which are amazing. But like I can understand how that puts somebody in a similar mindset. But I've never needed to do that. I think it's really just learning the techniques, the meditation techniques where you just kind of evaporate.
Do you follow a certain like meditation tradition or like protocol, or do you kind of just do it intuitively?
Yeah, like everything I do is just through feeling what works, and intuitive sitting and just honestly just relaxing. Like literally, it's just like I try to relax enough to the point where I'm not thinking about anything, and just getting out of the way. Just really getting out of the way.
Yeah.
I
don't think I could ever do that. I'm always in the way.
Well, I think like have you ever experienced something where you just feel like really at peace?
No. I'm
He's not
extremely
even
tortured.
lying. Yeah.
I have a lot of anxiety. No, I have, of course. Yeah.
Like I had to isolate it back to like when I was a kid, and like and isolate that feeling. But so that's what I concentrate on is just like that state, and then and honestly just breathing. But if you can just relax,
yeah,
you might be surprised at what happens.
You should do some like meditation tapes.
Yeah,
I think you would have like a good program for like meditation audio or something.
Yeah. I have recorded like a couple for my classes and stuff.
Is there going off book here, so let's just word this funny, but is
there's a book?
Oh, like the questions that I wrote down here. But,
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Is there any sense of like temporality to things that you've tapped into in yourself in meditation? Like, have you ever seen something where you're like, oh, that might be a past life or something like that? Does that make sense?
I'm just like really, I think maybe I'm like a little bit closed off to anything that I can't fully discern as like accurate and evidentiary support. And that's why I shy away. Maybe like in a few years, I'll be like more comfortable to expand into those areas. But as far as now, no, especially because most of my time for that is spent reading other people. Right. So I have found that I am not too effective for reading myself, except for one time when I was in the grocery store with my friend and we were like just having a great time, and I lost my phone in the grocery store. And I was just like, oh man, I have weird stuff on there, like weird poems. Like I got to get this phone. And I just kind of like, was like, all right, calm down. Like, just like, if you're psychic, just like use this for once for yourself. And I like, just like, kind of like just stood in the middle of the grocery store and like tried to like close my eyes. And then I like just saw in my mind, like the shrimp bags, like frozen shrimp bags. And I was like, frozen shrimp bags. Okay, go check the freezer. And sure enough, I go to check the freezer of frozen shrimp bags, and my phone is inside the freezer with the shrimp bags.
Wow.
I was just like, how did that happen? It was very funny. But for the most part, no, I cannot use it to further my own gain on anything.
Damn.
But sometimes I'll just like ask questions, which ultimately like my subconscious is answering.
Have you ever like found a person that you just couldn't get anything on, where it was just blocked off, or have you been successful in sort of finding something about everyone?
Yeah, so I just kind of lean into that when that happens. And sometimes because it'll like kind of appear like a brick wall. And so I'll know immediately that like that person is closed. A lot of times when I lean into that, the answers why will come, and that's validation. Like sometimes one time I, had a reading with someone, and I sat and I got the impressions that this person was pushed into getting it, and that they were quite a skeptic and they were going to be really uncomfortable in the situation. So I led with that, and that kind of softened them into the experience, because they were like, okay, well, she knows that I'm a skeptic without ever seeing me or knowing. So,
Yeah.
So that kind of happens. But.
Interesting.
We should have asked you to do a reading of your poetry before, but now I feel like I'd be putting you on the spot if I said that.
I can read something. I have my book over here if you want.
That's totally up to you. We can cut this part if you don't want to. But I thought that would be cool, actually.
Sure. Hold on. Okay. All right. This is also the name of my tape.
Well, that's a nice looking book there. You got to send us an image of that. We got to post that on the Instagram. What's the cover image there?
Oh, it's
like they can see us. I'm like, bring it closer to the camera so everybody can see it on this podcast.
It's the Hope Diamond, but and there's a fake Hope Diamond right next to it.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
Love it.
It looks really good. Yeah.
Thanks.
I hope you all on this, all the listeners out there, picturing this.
Okay. All right. I'll read the last poem from my book. Okay. It falls away. When the meteor hits, Earth falls away. And I swim, but I wish I were ocean. But you are the ocean, and the only one. When I am talking with you in a white room, it falls away. In the thick snow, silence, and I catch a glimpse of you. Just a flash of mouth in the thickest blizzard. Past the blanket trees and a glimpse of you. Earth falls away in the passenger seat, facing the sun and you.
That was beautiful.
Oh, yeah, really nice.
Yeah. Is that, where can listeners find that book?
They cannot.
That's a great teaser.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think I sold out all of them, but they can listen to a lot of my poetry in music form on SoundCloud via the No Rent Records.
Sick. We'll link that on the post for this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you think about aliens? Are aliens real?
Oh yeah, totally.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but
Have they visited Earth?
I don't see. I mean, yeah, I think so. I don't see how they could not have.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, well, nobody knows, but I think
I will
somebody
say,
knows.
like Eric, my husband, and I like went to Marfa, Texas, like West Texas, and there's this like phenomena there called the Marfa lights.
Yeah, Marfa lights. Wow, yeah.
And like we saw them.
Man.
And there was like people, there were like young, like high school couples there, like going to look at them, and they're like, yeah, my grandma said that like these like white orbs just like came up like big basketballs and would like dance right in front of her. So they've been there for like even before the highways and cars and stuff, which I found was really cool. But yeah, like we saw them. I don't know what they are, but
yeah, that's a weird phenomena. Like mountain lights. I think they're in like the Appalachias too. Appalachia. No, there's like a couple different instances. I mean, I've heard of the Marfa lights, and that seems amazing. I would love to go there. But that, I don't know what that is. Like the intelligent orb phenomena.
Yeah, they're from the Sphere Being Alliance.
Yeah, exactly.
You ever see that? Oh man, everybody has theories.
Yeah,
that's a good name for a podcast. Everybody has theories.
Yeah. Man, aliens. So,
we should start we should start that podcast. The three of us. Everybody has theories, and we'll just use fake names. We'll corner this market. Like, we could run off like 2 episodes a week after we do consensus.
Just a Byzantine network of interrelated podcasts.
Yeah. Start predicting lottery numbers. It'll be great.
Yeah, that's something people ask me about too. And like, hey, if you're psychic, like, can you just predict the lottery numbers? And,
Have you tried?
No, but I think that the reason that's not, essentially like when you're doing psychic work, when you're doing tarot work, when I'm reading an aura, it's all a blueprint, right? It's just like a blueprint based on your emotional, physical, spiritual, mental aspects. And I kind of describe it like at that moment, it's kind of like your GPS. And you can like plug in whatever address you want to your GPS, and by your actions, behaviors, emotions, beliefs, that is kind of designating the address. But at any time you can go rogue and just take a left and then get rerouted. So that being said, if the lottery numbers are not in somebody's blueprint, then they're not meant to win the lottery, and most people are not meant to have that in their life path. So maybe if I come in face to face with somebody that is meant to win the lottery, then I could deliver the lottery numbers. But for everybody else who's just like, that's just not in your blueprint right now, like it wouldn't surface. So
yeah, that makes sense. All right, are we going to win the lottery? Is the podcast going to win?
It's possible. I'm not tuned in right now, so
I'm just kidding. Yeah.
We should start. We should start predicting the lottery numbers and see how many episodes we can get away with doing that.
Yeah,
we're gonna manifest a winner.
I guess there has been like pretty cool, like psychic experiments trying to like interact with like random number generators and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's not like totally uncharted territory in terms of like trial and error of doing that. But yeah, it seems like even with a real psychic ability, tough to.
It's a lot to ask.
Yeah, tough to like guess 1 out of a billion or whatever they're doing.
Yeah. I think it involves like taking a fork and jamming it into a socket. You got to jumpstart it.
Oh, yeah, and I guess it's more like reading the future. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think And I think that would still fall into the blueprint. Because I definitely can bring forth certain events that are like very certain, especially when we're in a reading and something is very evident. But yeah, so I don't think it's isolated to anything like just the present.
Right.
It's more of the probability,
right? Yeah, that
and the
makes
usefulness.
sense.
It's really about the usefulness of the information. I think. I hope.
So, do you think that's it? Do you think there's free will?
Yeah, I do. I mean, but that's just my belief.
Right. But do you worry that like tapping into like possible blueprints of a future, do you feel that like limits one's free will, or do you feel like these are like changeable, or like they can be filled in?
Oh, they're changeable, and I've seen them change, in front of me. I definitely think they're changeable. And I do think, because you're not just working, it's not just you're working with many other gods.
Yeah. Like Zeus.
Yeah, like Zeus.
Well, some guy is Zeus out there. Just kidding. No,
everybody is offering their perspective, so
totally.
It all converges into one.
Right. Huh. Yeah.
Uh-oh, you got that look on your face.
Which one, me?
Yeah.
I don't have a look on my face. What look?
Maybe I stopped you from jumping into something there.
Oh, no.
Just pondering.
Yeah, just pondering. This has been crazy.
I'm sorry.
I think we've successfully subverted Mercury retrograde with this one.
So far.
Yeah.
My internet's been giving
not
out.
All bad.
Today.
Yeah.
Right.
It sometimes brings back old friends. So.
Are you pretty? How much stock do you put in astrology?
I mean, the same amount as any intuitive practice. I mean, I love the planets and the archetypes.
Right.
So I love them a lot. But I think there's a lot of misinformation on astrology right now, and it really confuses people. So that's not the best. But as far as just using the planets for their energy and what insight it can be brought for you, I love that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the what do you call it? Like the cyborg of like astrology apps. Like what's the one everybody uses? CoStar. Yeah. Like if you could visualize that, it's like astrology being this archetypal process, but then there's like an algorithm that's like patched into it,
it's nuts.
Yeah.
It's real. I
that
wonder
hurts
what
my feelings.
Yeah, the causality of that is like really weird.
It's not romantic at all. So
yeah, it's like a pop-up on your phone. It's like the opposite of romantic. That kind of puts me on this other train of thought, which is that like, so today they landed on Mars with some sort of robot again. Do you think that, I mean, I feel like the answer is probably no, but do you feel like it has any effect on like astrological reality when humankind like touches down on another planet?
Well, no, because I mean, it's just all of it is, as above, so below. So the planets and you. But I'm just like, please stop touching them.
Yeah,
just don't.
Right. I just
Just
and like,
do not.
Mars being this like sort of now, Mars is where we're supposed to, like where the rich are supposed to go when they leave us all behind to die.
How does that make sense?
And it's like the war planet. I find that it's like very much like they're going to go there and they're going to be like, and they're just going to eat each other or something.
Yeah.
Like it's like very beautiful.
so angry
Right.
when they get there.
Yeah.
To like terraform Mars into anything somewhat desirable would take like thousands of years, though, right? I guess, I mean, like,
Yeah.
they're studying how to jumpstart that process.
There's like nothing that they can possibly do that would ever make Mars more hospitable than the worst Earth can ever possibly get.
Yeah.
So it's like, they're really just trying to get away from us.
Yeah, well,
The
then I
worst
think they'll
Earth.
just do like an Elysium type of thing, like a
Right.
sky
Live in
society.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
been
it'll
on my
be
mind
cool when
lately.
they send something into Venus, Well, they've expressed like interest. They said there was like
Like a probe?
yeah. There, like, wasn't Elon Musk a couple months ago talking about some sort of vaporous life in the atmosphere of Venus?
Probably. I can't understand a word that guy says. No, is my aura diseased? Just tell me.
No, but
There's a pause there, though.
well, I would just say that you're extremely guarded. So there's just probably like decades of emotions that haven't been released,
Probably.
that are just pointed inward,
Mm.
and that just kind of integrating something energetically that makes you feel alive again would be beneficial.
Oh, I think that's true. Interesting.
But it looks like as of now you're kind of working through and understanding relationships in a new way, and might be having some positive revelations about that.
That would be nice. This can't go in the show. Just kidding. It actually can. It can go on the Patreon. Interesting, yeah. Do you see colors, or is it? Yeah.
It would start to come more. I mean, it's harder because you're not against. If you were against, I kind of ask people when I'm reading their aura to just do like a blank wall.
Right, there's stuff.
But over your head is like a little bit green, so I can tell that it's like relationships that you're thinking about. And if we started talking about it, it would come out more.
Yeah.
And I also know because of the white energy is kind of limited around the body, which just tells me that we got to get it moving a little bit more, because you want it to be outward.
Yeah.
Just general like feeling alive in the body type things.
Yeah. Interesting. I like it. I think. As long as I'm not diseased.
Oh my God.
No, neither. I mean, you both are fine. You're going to be okay.
Okay.
As long as I'm not diseased.
It's been a tough winter.
Yeah, for sure.
Did I have any other questions? Did you, David?
Well, I think we got a lot out there. Do you have anything else you wanted to, that's like you feel like you need to clarify or get out there? Or?
I mean, probably everything.
Yeah.
But it's, that's just the nature of this. So I'm going to allow it.
No, I think it was very clear.
Yeah, definitely.
It never seems that way when you're talking, but from my end, it felt like very concisely put stuff.
Thanks. Cool.
Yeah, a super unique one too. Like I said, I think like a very people-centric conversation about the quote unquote paranormal is nice, and it's endearing to the human condition.
Yeah.
What do you think about fairies? We've been reading a lot about fairies for researching another episode.
Oh, really? I don't know. I really don't have any experience other than like when I was a kid, we used to build fairy houses in my grandmother's backyard. She kind of told us to do that.
Whoa, cool.
And we just build little houses out of moss and stone. That's like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I think it's nice.
I feel like we should start asking people at the end of interviews like what they've been reading lately. I feel like that would be fun.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
What you been reading lately?
Oh, I read like 10 books at a time.
Me too. But you know, the most flattering one.
I'm trying to look around. I guess I've been reading this Edgar Casey book on dream interpretation because I'm doing this like dream lab. So I'm preparing for that. I'm reading a book on auras. I'm reading this poet, H.D. Hilda Doolittle is my favorite poet.
She's one of my top ever poets. Local to me too.
Yeah, I love her and hermetic definition. That's and then I just read a lot. So I read a lot of books.
Nice. That's the first HD mention on the podcast, I think. So that's good.
It's fun. Yeah. Interestingly enough, I think that's like the first Edgar Casey mention too.
It very well might be the Sleeping Prophet.
Right. He's an interesting one because he did so much work with other people in terms of what is his process, not really healing, but almost like diagnostic, using like clairvoyancy for diagnostic purposes. But then he sort of has that other material where it's about like uncovering like antediluvian worlds, the whole Atlantis thing, and like the origins of humankind and stuff.
Yeah, if you can just parse through and like discern like your own interpretations of whatever he's experiencing, it's really helpful. Like I think that there's a lot of stuff and especially in all of these books is what's heavily needed is just like a dose of serious discernment, and just taking away the mechanics of it and what you can relate to it and just what kind of feels right to you. Because even I read a lot of Dion Fortune or like just stuff like that, but then all of that is like written from a point and a time and a perspective where like some of the stuff you have to throw away, so I think just like when reading these books, having heavy doses of discernment is always beneficial, as is all material.
Yeah, that's very true. Cool. Maybe that'll wrap it up.
Read books, but write your own.
Yeah, he's a writer. He's lying.
I'm trying.
Is there any specific portals or websites or anything you'd like to direct people to check out more of your work or maybe get a reading from you or something like that?
Oh, yeah. My website is just evanaroman.com. And I kind of have information on readings and workshops or classes. And I write these kind of like lunar meditations, which are just what I feel about the moon. Every full moon and new moon. It's not I mean, it's not, I'm no astrologer, but I just say it's like my psychic interpretation of how the moon feels.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for coming on. It was an amazing, enlightening conversation. Especially some of the personal experiences I feel like are just really great to hear. Nobody else is going to tell it.
Sure.
Yeah. So we can hop out there. Do always please check out our Patreon for exclusive written content, episodes, and other stuff. We'll be back again soon. Thanks for listening.
And I wanted it, just like you asked me to live, and I wanted it, just like left me to live and I wanted it, just like it. You asked me to live and I wanted it, just like it. Left me to live and I wanted it, just like it. Left me to live and I wanted it, just like it.